Adventure 605 presents History Below the Pines. Episode 2, The Fillmore Ghost Town. So this was one of the more unique historic structures we were able to access. This is the historic hoist house at the historic Fillmore mine. This hoist house was pretty intact. You can even see the electronic boards that ran the electricity to the hoist house are still assembled inside. Just outside the hoist house were the original hoists that ran the miners down into the mine. We were told that this is not the original cable, but this is what it would have sat on when they bought it. What you see here is the original ladder that went up to the top of the hoist house so that they could service the hoist cable from the top. Stepping outside of the hoist house, you can kind of get an idea at how high that ladder went. It's a good 2 or 3 stories up to the top. The mine is caved in now, but was located under the hoist house. We have no idea on how deep it went. Standing inside of the hoist house was pretty cool. I like to think about what it was like back in the tin mining era and what went on inside of this hoist house. I mean, the hoist would have been running, the tools would have made loud noises, the miners would have been yelling. It would have been a full-on working mine. And to think about that while you're standing inside of this peacefully quiet, now abandoned shaft house is kind of cool. This is some more shots inside of the hoist house and below the hoist house. What you see here is part of the original hoist system. It was really neat to stand on the ruins of it and take a good look at it. It's a big piece of machinery for sure. What you see here is what is left of the boiler that helped run the hoist house. This is one of the coolest parts of this ghost town. This is the original assayer's office. This is where they would test the ores and the minerals to analyze them to determine their composition and value. So what you see are some original tools and pieces that they used to analyze the ore more in depth. We talked about dynamite earlier in the video. This is an original dynamite box that you see. These are some original samples out of the tin mine. These were in the assayer's office. They were testing it to find out how valuable the ore was. Safety was a main priority at the mine, and this is a original cot they hopefully never had to use. This is still left over inside of the assayer's office. This is the other part of the assayer's office with some odds and ends on the table that were either part of the mine or not part of the mine. We're not too sure. Upon leaving the mining structures, Christy Fillmore, the owner, was kind enough to show us where the miners once lived. Today these cabins are used as resort cabins, but we got the chance to look inside. Every cabin back in the day had a wood-burning stove and a bed, and maybe a table or chair, and that was about it. No kitchen or no bathroom inside of the cabin back in the day. Christy was kind enough to keep showing us a few more original miners' cabins that they had on the property. This is what the outside would have looked like. This is another glimpse inside of a cabin at a old stove. It was really neat to take a glimpse at these cabins and look at the detail that they used back when they built them for the miners to live in. There was probably 3 or 4 cabins left on the property, and today they are used as resort homes. Christy and her doggo were kind enough to let us take a few glimpses into the cabins to see the past history. And today, you can rent one of these cabins at the Fillmore Resort, and there's a lake right outside your doorstep, and you can put the fishing line in and sit back and relax. I recommend renting from the Fillmore family. You know, it's really cool to sit in this old mining camp and think about what it was like back in the day. And you get to see inside the cabins, and you get to see a glimpse of the miner's life. And that's something I really think is pretty cool. This next building is the original chow hall on the property. This is where the miners would have came after a long day of work to socialize, to eat their dinner, and just be merry all together. Up this old ladder is actually where the cook for the chow hall lived. He had a desk and a bed and a window, and that was about it. It was really neat to see all the history on the Fillmore mining property, but this in particular was cool because this cabin or shed was untouched, and we were told it was just left to the elements when the mine closed. So whatever is inside of this cabin was inside of it when the mine stopped. This was an inscription that was on one of the original mining cars. These mining cars were actually made in Denver, Colorado, and these are mining cars that were used inside of the Fillmore mine back in the mining era. What you see here are some original black and whites from the mine when it was in operation. What was once a hustling and bustling, thriving mine now sits quiet to the elements. This property is truly a window back in time. Huge thank you to the Fillmore family for having us on their property.